Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I always say that, and I'm very appreciative for you being here. We've recorded over 318 shows on this platform. I just got a text message from Spreaker thanking me for my business over the last several years, and I'm happy to be doing this. This is a labor of love, and I've enjoyed and benefited from all of my guests that have been on the show. So thank you very much if you're a previous guest listening in today. Today's one of those unique days out of all those shows that I had a guest not able to show up. I'm not really sure what the reason is why, but here I am. I've got the record button on, video's ready. I've got the lighting, the whole bit. So I just figured I would present a show today. And it's appropriate because I've been working on this year. I'm actually doing some speech and engagements around the country. We've got one booked in January and also one booked in February now, and looking to book more. So if you're looking for a keynote for a business meeting or leadership conference or whatever that might be, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to do it. And this will give you an idea of what I'll be speaking on this year. My two topics are going to be discipline and leadership, either separate topics or all in one. And today I want to talk about leadership. I want to use this time to discuss leadership and what that means and maybe bring some value through these words today. So first and foremost, understand I was not born a leader, at least not in my mind, because I do believe that we're all leaders, but we're not given that, through society or influences as we grow up, unless you've gotten some really good parenting or mentors at an early age. My first 5 years, I don't really remember, but from 5 until 13, I lived with my mom. And, it was a divorce household, and my mom had custody, and my dad had visitation. And because we lived 8 hours away, I only saw my dad on major holidays and through the entire summer, and then Christmas break, stuff like that, right? So when I was living with my mom, my life was more of a follower. I was trying to fit in, had some friends, but I was always the one following them and doing what they wanted to do. Leadership was the furthest from my mind. And, we could argue that at a young age, we don't often think about being a leader, but at the same time, it wasn't natural for me. I was following my friends who at the time were natural leaders. They were always the ones directing. However, when I moved in with my dad, and we're talking about, late 70s, I suppose. When I moved in with my dad, it was at age 13. And at that time, legally, you can decide if you wanted to live with your mom or your dad. And my mom was happy to allow me to go live with my dad because she knew I would have some fatherly figure in my life, as well as 2 stepbrothers. Immediately upon moving in with my dad, I had the opportunity to go to work for my grandfather, who owned a restaurant down in Newport Beach, and my other 2 brothers were also going to work there. Very quickly, my grandfather taught me the skills I needed that have lasted me from age 13 until 55 today. And some of the skills were simple, like if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, always be nice to the customers and be busy working and all these things. But he also taught me how to be a leader. He gave me the confidence to realize that if I put in a hard day's work, that there would be rewards at the end of that people would listen if I led by example. And the tools that my grandfather gave me, the following 3 seasons of working for him outside of school, again, summer break and holidays, Easter holiday, and all that other good stuff, my grandfather taught me what it was like to be in business. Now, I did see some benefit being the captain of the wrestling team, becoming captain of the defense on football, as well as my transition into what I would call a normal working environment. I took a first official job at 16 working for In-N-Out Burger. And what was interesting about the skills that I acquired from my grandfather is that I rapidly moved into leadership almost naturally at In-N-Out. And if I think back at what was different between me and my 4 best friends that worked with me at In-N-Out, is that I'd already learned the value of working hard, leading by example, and people follow that, right? Because I'm on the forefront. I'm the one that's willing to pick up the trash and get after it, show up early, stay late, work a little bit harder, push the goals to sell more that day. And people started following along those patterns. And those were things that my grandfather encouraged me to do, do the best you can. And if the best you can means making sure that the floor is always clean, right? So we did a better job with the restaurant and its appearance, or, being as nice as we can to the customers, realizing that we want them to come back, right? So all of a sudden, these traits that I learned unknowingly became leadership traits. And I realized at age 18 that I had this skill now, and I went into In-N-Out management, and I became one of the youngest store managers in that company history. And then I went on to become the most successful manager in In-N-Out history. So the point of telling you this is that I believe we all have the ability to be leaders. It's natural, it's instinctual, but sometimes we need people to bring that out in us. And that's what I'm hoping to do through this message, is allow you to realize that you do have leadership qualities. So don't sit back and think, well, they're a leader. They're naturally a leader. Oh, they're always the leader. You have a choice, and I'm sure you've made the choice to be a leader or not. And what I'm asking you to do is start to look at things as a leader would and become that leader that you were born to be. Don't allow society to tell you or dictate who you are and what you want to be. So let's get that set aside here for a second. In order to be a leader and an effective leader, you have to understand, what is your why? Now, for me, that's an easy one. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they have become the center of my life, alongside of my wife, by the way. That is my why. They align with my values. And if you've heard me talk about this before, my values are God, family, giving back, health to be able to do all those things, time to be able to do all those things. And then finally, the last thing is business, right? So my why is very, very clear. It's about my kids and my family unit under God, right? So it's easy for me to lead the ship in the direction that fits my values and what my goals are. If my goals are, as an example, to spend more time with my kids because that's in a value, I'm going to lead my ship in a way that aligns with that. What does that look like in real time? Well, in real time, it might mean deciding what I do for work and how often I do that, what I do to volunteer and how often I do that, and how important that role plays in those values and goals that I have. To take that a step further, I'm on school board. Now, I didn't grow up thinking, hey, I want to be on a school board. Matter of fact, I didn't want to be in school. So the fact that I'm on a school board right now is furthest from what I thought that I'd be doing in my life. But when you think about my values and how important my kids are to me, which is extended beyond my own kids to my friends' kids, to the kids in my neighborhood, now all of a sudden I realize that being on a school board fits the value that I have, the importance of family, right? And allows me to play a role in the future of these kids, right? So not just mine, but all the others that I consider now important, right? So we go through life making decisions based on our values, which I'm hoping that you'll do. And these decisions oftentimes become leadership roles. Now, I sit on a board of 5 others, so clearly I'm not the leader there. I'm not the chair, nor do I want to be. But what I've become is the leader in my neighborhood, or the leader in my community that has stepped up and raised my hand to say, hey, I want to do this. Okay. So my why is my kids, and you can see how that transitioned into me doing something like school board. The second point I want to make about leaders, and this will allow us to be effective as well. What breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? What is it that you feel you can make an impact on to change because it's breaking your heart? Now, looking again back at my history, knowing that I've had kids later on in life, what breaks my heart now are the lack of family units, what they used to be, how important they used to be. Also, the absent or uninvolved dads. I would love to see a society where the family becomes first again and our dads are more involved in what's happening, not only in their families, but in their community and on a national level. You know, I did something last year. There were some items in the library that I didn't agree with as a dad, things that I didn't want my kids to see. And maybe you've seen some of this nationally about some of the books that are available in the library to young adults. So I went to the library with the request of over 35 dads to join me to go to a library board meeting and stand up for what we felt was right based on our own values. And of the 35 that I reached out to, 8 were willing to make it. 8 dads. Now, everybody's got something in their life. I get that. They've got work. They've got, tasks to do. But when you think about how important these matters are to us as dads, as leaders, and the influence that we could make and help change based on what our kids will receive, not only just in our own homes, but in society, seems pretty important to me. And by the way, I did give them fair notice. It wasn't the day before. It was like 3 weeks before. But I had 8 dads show up. And I'm so grateful for those 8 dads. And by the way, fortunately, those 8 dads all brought somebody. So we wound up having almost 16 dads in the room representing our values and what we thought was important. Because again, what breaks my heart is the tearing down of the family unit and the twisting of traditional values. Right? So find as a leader what breaks your heart and get involved to make a change for that. Now, this applies to business too, by the way. If you've got employees that you have a heart for their financial freedom in their own lives, because maybe it breaks your heart to see that they don't have the home or the resources that you had as a kid or that you have now. There's a lot of things that applies in the break your heart category. I just wanted to give you my example. So find your example of what breaks your heart. Okay. My third point is it starts with you. It starts with me. Because if it's not us, then who's going to do it? We can all look around the room and go, well, they'll probably do something. They'll probably do something. But maybe they won't. And it requires us to generate the action to make it happen. And that is what determines if you're a leader or not. Because, we can talk ourselves out of being a leader, but the fact is that somebody's raised their hand. It's interesting. I go to some committee meetings and I'm very involved, and so is my wife. And oftentimes in these meetings, they'll give their gratitude for the activities for the last month or 2 months. And recently went to one where they recapped the entire year. And during the year-long recap of gratitude of everybody that was involved, my name and my wife's name came up 3 or 4 times. It started to get embarrassing because there wasn't a lot of other names to buffer our names. And I thought, gosh, I'm not looking for recognition here. I just raised my hand to do a job that needed to be done when nobody else was doing it. So if you're not doing it, then who else is going to do it? Is it going to be somebody like me that gets called on 4 or 5 times because nobody else is doing it? I would love to lighten that load. I'm happy to be volunteering and doing, but it would certainly be great if 5 other people raised their hands and then we had to pick like, okay, well, who hasn't done something yet? So don't be afraid to be a leader and realize it starts with you and me. And finally, along those lines, leaders will answer the call. So if you're sitting there thinking about what you're going to do, maybe you've been asked to fill a role. Leaders will answer that call. Think about that. Are you a leader? Will you answer the call? And what I like about that question is, I think the first thing that we have to think about is, where does that call come from in your life? Okay, where does that call come from in your life? For me, that call comes from God. And we've already talked about my values being God first, family second, right? For me, that call comes from God. My values come from God. I've aligned myself because of that, right? And you've heard me talk about what my values are. So when I think about where that call comes from, if I'm getting that call, I'm answering it. I'm not going to be the one that reaches up and says, God, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, for you, maybe that is God. Maybe that's a higher power. Maybe that's a spouse. Maybe that's a parent. Maybe that's a boss. But remember where that call comes from and what that means to you. Okay? What that means to you. Second is focus on the mission. Once you've answered that call, focus on the mission. Realize that you've been tasked with something to do. There is a mission, and focus on that. Find out what's going to make it a success. What does that look like? Going back to my school board story, what success looked like to me was being involved at a level where I had the education, I understood the rules of engagement, and I was a participant. Now, fortunately for me, it wasn't that hard because there wasn't a lot of participants on that board in the past. I will say now, we have great participants after we flipped a few seats on that board and a few key positions. So you will find in a short amount of time that by answering the call, becoming the leader, remembering who gave you the call, and focusing on that mission, that you will be doing leadership activities. You will become that leader that maybe you didn't think you were. And then finally, never go alone. Find a partner, find a colleague, find a support mechanism, and never go alone. They're out there. People want to support you. They want to help you, and they're there for you. It's interesting. Human nature is to help one another. I can't tell you how many times somebody's asked me for help. I said, yeah, of course. Of course I'll help. I'm so glad you asked. And I'm sure you do the same thing. But where we lack in that arena is asking for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't go it alone. Be a leader and know that somebody will be there to support you. So, what do we do with all this? Well, we answer the call. We share the news. We realize that there is more strength inside of us than maybe what we've been told, maybe the life that we've been living, maybe the things that we've been doing. But naturally, we all have the ability to be leaders. Don't be stifled. Don't think that you can't, because you can. So that's it for today. That's my topic, leadership. And I look forward to hearing from you if you've made a decision to become a leader or do things beyond your capacity. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll have many more great guests coming up soon. Thanks. Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.